Brand identity is such an important thing to have because once you have it, you unlock everything because you do everything with that in mind. So I always allowed myself to change because as you're growing and evolving, your brand is going to have to evolve because you're forever changing. But one of the overarching brand methods that I took is I always asked myself questions like, what does a beer feel like? What are the topics that a beer sings about? And they all stem from really, really deep, deep places in my heart. That's what makes it genuine. Hi, my name is Abir.
Hey, this is Faouzia, and this is Song Start.
To be a professional artist, you're expected to have the full package. You've got to have songwriting and vocal chops, plus the ability to translate your music on stage, on socials, and through your visuals. Even as you build a trusted team around you, you're expected to do it all. The most impactful, resonant artists create an immersive world. But in order to create your world, you first have to know who you are. So how do you define your artistic identity? Hey everyone, my name is Olivia Reed. I'm an artist, songwriter, producer, and one of the creators of Song Start with Spotify for Artists and Notable. And welcome to the Song Start podcast. On this episode, I had an absolute blast talking with artists Abir and Faouzia. While Abir now lives in LA and Faouzia in Canada, both singers were born in Morocco and both are signed to Atlantic Records. Faouzia came up posting songs on YouTube, building her career on powerhouse pop tracks that were steeped in female empowerment. Not to mention her single Minefields, which features none other than John Legend. To date, the trilingual singer's truly global fan base clocks in at almost 3 million monthly listeners on Spotify. Meanwhile, bilingual Abir blends modern pop and Arab influences on her 2020 project Heat. Through her music and her frank dialogue on socials, Abir is also a trailblazer when it comes to addressing harmful stereotypes. I so admire both of these artists, not only for their music, but because they also strive to use their platform to highlight their culture and identity. Artists like these ladies are the future.
Hi, ladies.
Hello!
Hi.
Thanks for coming on.
Thank you.
Thank you for having us.
So excited to meet you and talk today.
Likewise. This is my first podcast like this.
Oh, amazing.
I'm excited.
Just to get started, I'd love to know what your relationship was like with music growing up and maybe how that's evolved.
All right, who's going first?
You can say.
Faouzia, want to jump in?
Yeah, for sure. So music has always been a really big part of my life. I can't remember a time where it wasn't. So I feel like ever since I was a baby, I've just been surrounded and immersed by music. It was not only just pop music, it was also just Arabic music as well. And I feel like I had both worlds so present in my life that as I grew as an artist, I was this combination of pop and Arabic music. I feel like I've continued to grow as an artist and as a vocalist because of those two worlds. And I would listen to Beyonce and Ariana Grande and Lady Gaga, and I'd be like, I love their voices. How do they do that? But then I'd also listen to Kulthum and like Warda, all these amazing Arabic vocalists. And I'd be like, how do they do that? And I feel like I would listen to both. And that's why I feel like I'm such a mix and blend now. And I also grew up learning how to play the piano, the violin, the guitar, songwriting, just everything that was music related. I was super passionate about, and I still am to this day.
Yeah. And what was it like growing up for you, Abir?
Very similar to Faouzia. Music has always been a super, super big part of my life. And even in school, you do the talent shows. And then I was a cheerleader. I would always sing the national anthem at all the games. And I was always doing it as kind of a hobby. But the style of music that I wanted to be in was so different from what I'm doing now. I remember back then I was listening to more jazz, and I was listening to these big, big vocalists Whitney Houston, Celine Dion, and then also in the Arab world, as Faouzia said, Kulthum was my queen because my mom would put her on when we were cleaning. And it's if you heard Kulthum, it meant that sun was going down. You had to clean your room. The kitchen was being cleaned. So I grew up kind of immersed in both of these worlds too. And whether I like it or not, it exists in my vocal technique. It exists in my identity, it exists in my everyday life,
Well, both of you were born in Morocco and then moved to North America at a pretty young age. So how did that like affect your family and your relationship to music?
I was born in Morocco, but I moved when I was 1. So I was still I was a baby.
Tiny.
And so I spent, I was a tiny little baby. So I spent most of my time like growing up in Canada. But the thing is, as soon as I would cross my front doors of my home, I got in my Moroccan living room and like we'd be eating Moroccan food. And like my parents are so Moroccan, like it's undeniable. Even though growing up in Canada, I got to experience both worlds, I feel like I'm very, very much a Moroccan girl.
Yeah, so I was born in Morocco and I moved here when I was about like 6 years old. So coming to the US, I came in speaking French and Arabic and I didn't know a lick of English. So you're like kind of immediately felt to be like an outlier and you kind of stand out. But I grew up in a very, very diverse community and town. So I kind of felt like, oh, like everyone's just from different countries. And so being Moroccan was just like I'm Moroccan, she's El Salvadorian, he's Nigerian, you know? So it was just, it was a thing that made me unique, but also like brought everyone together. Now being 27 and living in America and visiting, going back home, I see how different I am just being Arab American. And just like how I view things, my perspective is much different than I think if I had stayed in Morocco. And I always say this when my parents came here, I'm like, yo, if my parents got to America, that means I can do anything. Literally. It means I can do anything as far as going to become a pop star, a singer, like an Arab singer, a Muslim singer, like, you know, so to me, it kind of like just brings everything together in a sense.
Right. I'm sure a lot of people can relate to that as well, especially in America, and just figuring out how those early experiences go on to shape what your careers look like and what your artistry looks like.
Yeah.
Did you have any experience with music education coming here?
I think as far as like doing music in school, it was like choir. I think honestly, my biggest like education came from studying other artists.
Faouzia, how about you?
I never realized until now that my lessons came from listening to other vocalists and being like, okay, so how do I figure out how to do that?
Well, yeah. And I think like you guys were both saying, just like listening to other artists can be even more impactful than structured education, and also like working with your peers and absorbing info like Songstarter, podcast, or YouTube videos, all of that, just like absorbing that material is like the new way of education, I think. And one of the things I wanted to talk about today, which I feel like is also very current right now, is a lot of younger artists starting out are struggling to define their brand, quote, or like what they might feel they have to control as their narrative for how they're perceived as artists. So I'd love to know a little bit about how you came to define who you guys wanted to be as artists and how you navigate communicating who you are to people around you.
Brand identity is such an important thing to have because once you have it, you unlock everything because you do everything with that in mind. You know, like a beer walks and talks like this. A beer sings about this. A beer, like when she gets up on stage, she does this. A beer doesn't do this. Like, I don't know, maybe 2011 or I was still in high school and I was interning at a studio and my mentor at the time, his name is Yudu Gray. He was like, what are your do's and don'ts? Write out your do's and don'ts. What is a beer willing to do and what is a beer not willing to do? And as the years passed, so much of what I said I wouldn't do, I ended up doing. So I always like kind of allowed myself to change because as you're growing and evolving, your brand is going to have to evolve because you're forever changing. But one of the like overarching brand like methods that I took is I always asked myself questions like, what does a beer feel like? Like, what are the topics that a beer sings about? And they all stem from like really, really deep, deep places in my heart. That's what makes it genuine. But I also just find like keywords that describe me. Like I'm disruptive. I like to be effortless when I think about things. So I kind of like give myself this kind of brand manifesto. And then I follow it until it doesn't suit me anymore. And then I redo it.
Yeah, I love how intentional that sounds too. Like manifesto, it feels like you're kind of setting up a path for yourself, but still leaving room, like you said, to evolve. I'm sure it's so important, so you're not so tough on yourself, or that your audience can kind of grow with you and see those changes over time.
Yeah, for sure. Because I think even when I started out and I was like independent, my manager and I were doing such heavy brand work and I liked everything that we were doing. And then it came to a point after my first project where I was like, I am not this anymore. Like, I'm so much more and I want to share that. So we have to do this again. And we kind of did all that like searching and digging and all that all over again. And now it feels like, okay, this suits this part of my life.
And Faouzia, how has that experience of, like you said, Abir, thinking, it's just so much thinking about who you are and trying to define what that identity is. What has that been like for you?
Yeah, it's definitely very important, whether you realize it or not. When you think of an artist, you're going to associate certain words and like certain themes and a certain look to them. And I think that's important because they created their own little world as they grow as an artist. And as you grow as just like a songwriter or as a person, your world grows. And then there's even like this talk about like eras, like, oh, I love this era or this era.
Yeah.
But I feel like each era ties into the next. And for me, it's been all about kind of going with the flow and being like, okay, who am I right now? Like, what am I doing right now? And I think at the end of the day, if I stay true to myself, I'm always going to have those core elements to me. Like with my music, I love it when it's super emotional. And I love like big pop songs and soaring melodies. And I think that's always something that I want in my music, whether the style changes or whether the concepts change. I think the main thing has been keeping the root and like the core of my songs the same, where it's like there is something strong that I want to say in this song. Like I either want it to be like super sad, like I want it to be like cry, or like I want you to feel empowered, like walk girl, show your stuff. Like I always want people to feel like super empowered when they listen to my music. And as for my visuals, I feel like that changes a little bit more. Like I like to have fun with it and be very creative. I think the main thing for me is just always staying a little bit out of the box. And as I grow as an artist, I'm already envisioning ways that I can do it even more like in a weirder way.
Well, and like what you said, I think too, the through line in all of your work comes through in the fact that like you're at the center of it and only you have your experiences and what you want to convey.
Yeah.
And then it makes it all feel cohesive, you know, as you're being honest and authentic.
Exactly.
As your true self. It definitely comes through in your music for sure.
Yeah, it's just fun.
Have you guys ever experienced a misconception about your identity or something about your brand that you didn't like and had to address or change?
It's just, I feel like there's always going to be slight misconceptions about like who you are from time to time, because it's like, whether it's with the music, I've had many times where I'll get songs or I'll write something and then I'll be like, this isn't quite me. But then everyone else will be super excited about it. But I'll be like, like, I don't know why I wrote this. I don't know how it came out, but like, this is definitely not who I am. And when it comes from the public, like sometimes so many people will kind of mix who you are as a person with who you are as an artist. And like so many people are like, I thought you were going to be so intimidating, or like, I thought you were going to be so kind of cold. I'm like, why? And they're like, well, your music is all that way. And so I feel like people are going to have like an opinion on you just based on whatever they know about you. You just have to like stay true to yourself.
Amen.
Yeah. Well, I think what's interesting too is both of you have talked about earlier, you were saying just the profound influence that Moroccan culture or Arab culture has on you and in your music and just as a person. How has that impacted your work or your identity?
You know, it's such a big part of what I do now. And it's something that I like made a conscious decision because I always want to stand for something and I want to be me unapologetically. And if that is an Arab Moroccan woman, then that's what you will see. I think just doing it in music has brought me even closer to my roots because I just find myself constantly attached to the idea of like, wow, I'm Moroccan, but I'm in America. I grew up in America. My experiences are Arab American. They're not similar to what's happening on the ground in Morocco or even just the Swana region in general.
Sure.
But it's cool that I have that perspective and that I can share that perspective because that is a perspective to be shared. When you are so loud and unapologetic about who you are, it rubs people the wrong way regardless. So you can't be disruptive and expect everyone to just be like, all smiling, giggly. You kind of, it comes with that. It comes with people being like, oh, she's not really Muslim. Because if she was Muslim, she wouldn't be wearing a bathing suit. I've even gotten, like, she's Moroccan, she's not Arab, which is, I'm Moroccan, but I speak Arabic. So it's like, just a lot of people trying to tell you who you are. And so you just have to remember that you know who you are. And that when you speak loud about who you are, you give people the right to make their own assumptions and their opinions. So brush that shit off.
Yeah, absolutely. Yeah. Well, I love what you said too, is like, well, when you're going to be disruptive, maybe not everybody's going to love it. Not everybody's going to connect with you, but I'm sure the people that do connect with you feel that on a deeper level because they feel that honesty from you.
Thank you.
I love that. That is so true. And I just saw this video this morning and it was like, no one says anything about people that are quiet. Like no one's going to talk about you. If people are talking about you, that means you're like being yourself. That means you're doing something worth talking about. Like, and I'm just like so excited to be bringing like our Arab Moroccan roots to pop music because like, come on, that is so cool. Like I growing up, that wasn't a thing. Like I didn't have any like Moroccan pop girl like to look at or to like look up to or anything. It's so cool that we can be that and be the like pave that road. And I feel like it's a little more difficult because it hasn't been paved and because there's still so much work to be done. But like it's so fun. It's like unexplored territory. And I know, and there's like the support that we get from just like MENA, like the Middle East, North Africa is insane because everyone is so excited. Like look at them go in like the West. Let's go. So it's fun and it's like scary a little bit, but I wouldn't have it any other way.
How does that impact your fan relationships in the Middle East and North Africa, that region, compared to maybe your fans in North America?
They feel like family because they'll throw a joke in there like on Twitter or something. And then I'll genuinely be laughing out loud. I'm like, oh my gosh, because it feels like home. Like they'll say something that's like only a Moroccan would know, or like they'll put a picture up and I'm like, oh my gosh, that's so Moroccan. Like it makes you just laugh and you're like, it feels like you're just like sitting with your friends or your family. So I really appreciate those like fans from across the world, but like the ones in Morocco make me feel like I'm just at home and just chilling with my friends and my family.
Well, you both kind of hinted at this a little bit, but how have those experiences of speaking about your identity, defining your identity, sharing your culture, how does that impact your songwriting process?
When I listen to Arabic music, it's so poetic. And so like, even if they're like telling someone that they love them, it's like compared to the like greatness of the sun. And it's like the moon and the skies could never bring what you bring to me. It's just so deep. And I find when I'm going to write a song, I always want that depth. It has to mean something. Otherwise, for me, it becomes kind of like pointless, Being able to say something like, it's written, which in Arabic, it's maktub. It means that like whatever is going to happen has already been written for you. So enjoy the day. It's just that like quick change of the lens to be like, ooh, let's say maktub, let's say it was written instead of what we would normally say, gives it that edge in a way.
Do you have any advice or thoughts on how people who are just starting out as songwriters or producers can appreciate different cultures and music coming from backgrounds that aren't their own without crossing that line into appropriating those musical tropes?
So I feel like if someone is really truly appreciating another culture's music, then it really shows. You can tell when somebody's been just like immersed in it or dived into that whole world. And they've really just wanted to share something that they found so special. And I think that's great, because when I see other people sharing Arabic music or having that in their music, and you can just see them like moving and like grooving to it, and it makes me so happy, because I'm like, I grew up listening to that, and like seeing you now being able to appreciate it is so special.
Right? Yeah, I agree. I'm no voice of authority in this by any means, just this is a disclaimer, but I think another way is collaborating with artists or musicians from that culture, from that region, is kind of a good way to show the appreciation, especially because they're going to give you the most authentic things. So it's not done in a way that's kind of seems appropriated. I think making sure to keep people from that specific culture or region in mind when you're collaborating. And yeah,
or even just having them behind the scenes too, like sharing it with your Arabic friends, being like, what do you think of this? And they'll be like, yo, I don't know what you did there, but like, or they'll be like, this is amazing. Like
that's not it.
Like, I love it. But yeah, collaborating is a great way too.
And just like you said, sharing it, I think another thing is, like, I am so obsessed with West African music. I am not even joking. It's probably like on my Spotify at the end of the, year end thing. It always says like you listen to Afro beat more than anything.
Yeah.
And that's a very new thing for me, maybe like 3 years. But in doing it, I'm sure I've just like found out about so many artists, and I'm like constantly sharing, like, because just being able to share other music from the region is also probably a good idea.
Yeah, and I'm sure just like studying it and absorbing it and making sure you know where some of the roots of that come from.
Yeah, for sure.
That's awesome advice. I also love how you said making sure just like bringing people who are a part of that culture into the creative process in some shape or form, because it also makes sure, even just from like a financial standpoint, that you're not benefiting off of a culture that you're not a part of, but more so just like having a natural, organic combination of styles is really interesting.
Yeah.
Do you both speak English, French, and Arabic?
Yeah.
I speak just English and Arabic. I lost my French after I learned English, but yeah.
It's okay.
Still very impressive though.
But the Moroccan Arabic is actually, it's so funny. We are not understood by many. We understand most, but we're not our Arabic is not understood by many, the dialect of the Arabic that we speak.
How do you decide, I guess, then, like what songs inspire you to use multiple languages, or what songs are better suited in English versus writing maybe a whole song in Arabic or French for Faouzia?
When I'm writing in French, it just like suddenly takes a more serious turn. Like all of a sudden, it's like Abir was saying, like the moon and the stars thing. Like I wrote this line: "Arrête de me regarder comme un avare. Au lieu de l'argent, c'est l'amour que tu ne dépenses pas." Which means like stop looking at me like you're frugal, but instead of money, it's love that you're not spending. And I'm like, I would have probably never written that in English because it's just so intense. I love switching between languages because I'm like, yo, I'm gonna get serious. Like, and then when it comes to Arabic, it's more like of a vibe. And I can vibe more with Arabic melodies and Arabic words. And then when it's English, I'm like, yo, hey, pop, let's go. So I love being able to explore like all the different worlds. It's just so much fun.
I think also for melodies too, even though I don't speak French, I still remember the pronunciation. So sometimes when I'm just jumping, jumping through melodies or trying something on a track, I will sing in Arabic, like full-blown Arabic, and then I'll replace the words with English words. Or I'll sometimes like sing in like a broken French, and like the cadence changes, like the way you sing certain words or syllables like changes. So it always adds like a little bit of an edge.
Yeah, and I just want to say I witnessed that firsthand. Literally when she was playing her vocal passes with like all these Arabic words, I was just sitting there like, I just want to listen to this forever. Like even if it wasn't like a full song, I was like, this is beautiful. Like it was such a cool process to see, because I've never heard of like somebody singing in a whole other language and like replacing it, but that's so smart.
Thank you.
That's such a unique like creation tool too. I'm sure like for people who are just starting out writing and are multilingual, using that as a tool. You might have just given everyone your secret sauce, but
Oh no, it's no secret.
How does your Moroccan culture, really just anything that inspires you, how does that come into the creative style of how you create visual materials and all the way through fashion choices?
Ooh. My favorite thing, obviously, is to make the music, but once the music is done, the visual identity of it is so important. Like my last project, I would like put images on the TV in the studio that would like make me feel like I was there. I always say my spirit animal is a wild horse. So I would put images of like horses everywhere. And then I kind of think about like, how does that go into my style? Well, like I need really long hair and I need it to like go with the wind, because a horse, when it runs, its hair is just kind of like flowing in the wind. And I use all those kind of images in my head. And sometimes the song happens first, or sometimes the visual happens first. An image that I'm inspired by happens. And I'm like, now I have to write a record about like running free and not caged in because I'm a wild horse. So yeah, I feel like visually it's such an important part of the creative process because it's fun. Sound is important. Songs are important. You'll never forget a melody, but visuals are just as important. You'll never forget an image. Yeah. And it can create so many stories.
Yeah, absolutely. And I'm picturing too, is it the red dress outfit that you have with the super long hair blowing in the wind? So I love that shoot.
Thank you. Good. Thank you. That was literally with that in mind. Yeah. It's so funny you brought that up. Thank you.
I had this music video for How It All Works Out. It's actually, I think, turning 1 year old today, which it came out a whole year ago. At Moroccan weddings, they have like these beautiful headpieces and it like kind of goes over your face. And this definitely was like my inspiration for this video. So I tried to find a piece that was very similar to it. And it gives like super like Arabic vibes. And that was the first time that I was able to do something in that world for the cover art and for the music video.
I love it. Obviously, like being an artist is sometimes referred to as having the whole package, meaning like music and videos, and social media, fashion. How do you guys handle the pressure of having so many things expected of you as an artist? It's not a hard question.
Oh, man. I see it like kind of two different ways. Sometimes I have to remind myself that as much as this is my dream and my career, and I've like gotten here because of my fans and the people who've supported me, it's also my job. So when I choose not to do certain things, I'm kind of jeopardizing that role. Like I have such a hard time with social media because you have to kind of be on all the time to do it. But when you're on, you're kind of doing it right and well, and you're sharing content because the people who support you want to be let into your life. But I grew up in such a different way where if you were wanting to see what Britney was wearing, you would watch the award show or you'd like catch some paparazzi image, but you didn't have like full access to her. So I kind of time and time again, I'll kind of be like, oh yeah, I'm always on. I got to do, I got to do my socials. I got to get on. I got to be connected. And then I'll be like, damn, but the music is going to be worth it. And when I do bring the music, then I'll bring the fire visuals and then you can see me then. But in this era, you kind of have to do this or you're out of sight, out of mind. I think that's just where the world is. I struggle with it, but reminding myself, we got to do this. We got to do this. It's just the one sacrifice. And then God willing, inshallah, like things will become much easier.
And I feel like it's getting harder to keep up. I feel like there's always a new platform.
Yeah.
And it's a lot of fun, but like, let me tell you, when you're not in that mood of like being online all the time, every single day, and then you're always told like, okay, well, then just be more like laid back or relaxed on your social media. And it's like, that is totally fine. But I feel like as a person, I'm such a perfectionist that when I show something, whether it's myself or whether it's my music or whether it's my photos, it needs to be like top notch. So it's hard for me. And I feel very reserved. So being on all the time is hard. But honestly, the fans make it so much easier because everyone's just so nice and sweet. You're like, what was I afraid of? But then I go back to like my perfectionist mindset. I'm like, lock yourself up until everything's done. But yeah, I think you just need to go easy on yourself because at the end of the day, there's only so much you can do. And there's so many different social media platforms. Like now there's TikTok. Before it was just Instagram. And then Snapchat was added. And, you know, Twitter has always been there, but Twitter is more chill. And then there's YouTube and there's Facebook.
Right.
So you got to like see, okay, what am I prioritizing? Which social media platform do I want to work on the most? Like, which one do I want to, you know, build on the most? YouTube is so important, especially for an artist. So my advice for artists is like really build your YouTube and Instagram as well. But that's just my opinion though.
Sure. It really varies based on the region too, I feel like.
Yeah.
An artist I work with, Talia Lahoud, she's from Lebanon, and she does covers in English, Arabic, and French, and has built like this really amazing audience all on YouTube. But then I think there's another challenge to then translate that following or that community on social media into, you know, a full career.
And you see these artists that have been in the game for like 15 years, and you're like, well, look at all these 9 albums, like this whole like repertoire. That's why you're like Rihanna. That's why you're like Ariana, Beyonce, The Weeknd. Like that's because they've taken the time to like bring forth like project after project, visual after visual. And at first it's just, you might not be on that level yet because you just haven't had the time to like do everything you want to do yet. It just takes time, I think, and staying true to who you are because people sense that authenticity.
Do you ever go on Spotify for artists to check out who your audience is, and how do you use that?
Yeah, I definitely do. Spotify for Artists is one thing I actually frequent because like as soon as you open up the app, it tells you how many people are listening at that exact moment, which is like always just a shock to me. I'm like, oh my God, there's this many people listening to my song right now. And then other ways I've done it is like if I'm going to click a song, like for example, I released a song featuring ouihya called Searching. I would just click it and I know she has an Australian fan base. And then also we featured Beam, who has kind of like an overall fan base. I don't know. So it just seeing like how many fans are listening from all over the world in those sections. Also seeing how many people are listening a week. It kind of just helps me know that people are listening. That's very important. And then I think when it comes to touring, it's kind of like data mining done for you. You think about what cities you'll hit, or maybe what cities you might need to advertise a little bit more in because they're listening and you haven't done that much advertising there. So yeah, it's really, really useful.
It's the first app I open every single morning. I'm not even joking. Like I wake up, I'm like Spotify for Artists. I love looking at that little number of like how many people are listening. And then especially when I just release a song, I will spend a lot of time being like, where is this performing well? Like right now I'm looking at my latest single. I'm like, oh, US. Okay, US. I see you. And then I'm like, oh,
New
okay,
York City's
Germany.
all me.
Yeah. And I'm like, okay, Germany, go off. And I'm like, and then I see it and I'm like, oh, like, let's say like Canada's like lower this time. I'm like, I wonder why that is. And I start to just like analyze things.
Yeah, that's so cool and really smart to be able to like check in on it and then like make, like you said, of your like business decisions off of it, or like maybe you're going on tour in Germany now because you got fans there, and that's really cool to look for opportunities as well. Do you have any advice on how to use your platform responsibly or use it in ways that highlights things that you care about?
For me, I always feel like I've always said, like, I want to help people, whatever that means, you know, whether it means my music helps, whatever it means, maybe my money helps, maybe it goes back into these communities, or maybe it's just being able to say something that changes someone's idea of a certain subject or topic or brings light. But the most recent thing that I've been very passionate about online is what's happening in Palestine. And in doing that, it wasn't thought out. I actually just became a human. I'm not going to keep being an artist on Instagram. Like at some point you kind of have to tap into the things that you actually care about and voice them. And so if you're very passionate about a topic, I don't think being strategic about it is necessarily the best thing. So at least for me, if I'm very passionate about something, if you're listening to me and you're listening to what I'm saying in my songs and you're listening to, you know, what I have to say, then you can also listen to this part because this is also something that I have to say and I care about. That's just kind of how I've felt works best for me.
That's a great way to think about it, as like as a compass to approach those topics in a way that's really genuine and that you really feel something about, because there's a lot of danger in performative allyship or performative awareness. So I think it's really great for all of us to just like to be checking in. If I go to post something, to be checking in and be like, do I really care about that? Am I educated in this piece, or am I just sharing my perspective on it?
Like, I don't have all the followers in the world. I don't have all the fans in the world. But as far as I know, the people that I do have listen, and that they're willing to hear what I have to say. And if they don't like it, obviously the door is on the right. But but for the most part, I found that like when I would speak about certain subjects, even the bathing suit pic, I posted a picture and like I got so much for it, like unbelievable. My DMs were like the meanest things I've ever seen in my, like, honestly, in my career. And it was just because I took such a stance, I guess, in my caption. I was like, can you really like guess someone's faith off their appearance? And everyone was just going in. And it was so refreshing to be able to go to my DMs as well and find people like educating me on like, hey, what you're saying is right. Here are some points. Here are the reasons, like this, and this, and this. Or like just having people that may not fully agree with me still take my side. It feels like when you speak about things that matter to you, genuinely matter to you, you can get also knowledge to teach you more. And also people are listening. I remember someone saying like, I feel so seen through this, And so I think, I think just being genuine about what you speak about and what you care about kind of deads the idea of any performative activism or like allyship or anything, because it's coming from your soul and your heart.
Right.
And I think something that's really important is that lots of people, I feel, especially on the internet, are kind of on the defense all the time. It's like lots of people are not listening. They're just listening to reply, not listening to understand someone else's point of view. So I think trying to put yourself in other people's shoes and just trying to listen and understand, like, they're them. Like, the reason why they are the way they are is because they've had a whole other life that you haven't. Like, they don't have the same path as you whatsoever. So I feel like if we all just take a step back and listen more and just like listen to other people's opinions, listen to what other people are going through, instead of just attacking all the time, like, just take a step back and listen. Like, why do they think this? Why are they passionate about this? What could they have gone through? Just saying like listening is also very important. Listening to understand.
Yeah. Just to add one last thing, I think very close friend of mine once told me is like, you can't really complain about people saying something about you or calling out something or whatever, because you choosing to be an artist or choosing to be in the spotlight, it's like you are going to get people's opinions of you because you're taking a stance. Anytime you take a stance on something, it allows people to say whatever they want. And as long as you remember you're in control, meaning you're in control of how you feel, what you do post, what you do share, what you do speak about, you have to like really, really, really believe in it. So I think believing in what you say is so, so important. And that kind of dictates how you respond to things that someone might say in the future. Because if you're passionate about it, you're going to be very, very well prepared to like go to war,
How do you navigate your stage persona and your look as a woman in the industry when everybody seems to have an opinion?
I think no matter what, no one can tell you how to dress or how to look. If you don't believe that you look good and feel good, you're going to walk out looking like stressed. And like you will never be able to shine the way that you can if you don't feel comfortable. So like, honestly, whenever someone like tries to tell me like, you should wear this or you should look like this, I will always, at the end of the day, wear what makes me feel comfortable, do what makes me feel comfortable. Because otherwise I literally cannot function. Like I won't be able to perform properly. And although like fashion and like the look and everything is so fun, to me, it's the music. I really want people to like focus on the music and have like the visuals as like an extra, as a bonus. So it feels like as a woman, the visual is kind of what a lot of the focus is on. It's like, look at this. Like, did she lose weight? Did she gain weight? Did she this or did she that or da, da, da? It's like, what is my weight? Or like, what does anything have to do with the music? So I just have to really remind myself to feel comfortable in my own skin and do what makes me feel comfortable. No, like above all, above any opinion, above what anyone thinks. Because at the end of the day, they're going to go to bed and they're not going to care. but did I stay true to myself? Did I do what makes me feel happy?
Yeah. And that really like radiates as strength, I think, too. Like an audience can feel that from you because your performance is going to be more honest. You're going to carry that energy.
I totally agree with Faouzia, because I think when you're confident in your skin and kind of unapologetic and embrace who you are, it's very hard to like break through that barrier. You know, as long as you're comfortable and you're going to do your actual job the best, which is to perform or sing or write a song or whatever, as long as you know you're in the best suit that can do that, that's all that matters.
Mm-hmm.
Absolutely. I love that. So the last couple of things that I wanted to discuss is how you guys define success in your artist career.
It's never by metrics. It's more so by how I feel like accomplished. One of the first moments that I think brought that feeling of success was a record I wrote called Finest Hour. And it started off as just like me pouring out my heart into a song, and then being able to see that grow into something that so many people related to. It just made me kind of realize that what I'm doing is not empty work. And then after that, I kind of got the confidence to do my last project, Heat, which is me fully embracing my Moroccan roots and being a child of the diaspora. And in doing that, it was a whole different feeling of success. It was a different type of success for me. So I think defining it, it's not just one way. It comes with different projects, different moments. After I film a video, you know, and we get through the video shoot day, I'm like, success. It is a success, right? Because I'm working with great people. I'm working with people who see my vision, who can help me bring it to life and share it with others. So I think it just redefines itself every single time I live through another moment.
Same thing for me. It's all about the feeling. There have been songs that I've released that, let's say, outperformed other songs, but I felt happiest when I saw some songs have more success because I connected with that song specifically even more. Like an example is my song Tears of Gold. I wrote that song from like my heart, and as an artist, I thought that song was a step up for me. And I could see my evolution in my songwriting and the way that my voice was. I one-upped myself, and I was so proud of myself. And like seeing people connect with that song specifically made me more excited, even though it's not the one that did the most numbers, because I'm like, something that I was so proud of, and seeing other people connect with it made me so excited. I feel like, yeah, it's all about how you feel in your little heart.
Both of you said stuff that's just so potent. It's like, celebrate the little wins along the way. Like every win should be celebrated and acknowledged. And also like success is how you define it for yourself. You know, like if that song meant the most to you, then that's like pop champagne for that one, you know, like no matter how it does, you know. So I think that's a really good way to stay centered too on what's important to you.
I feel like I always get so caught up in my head. So something that helps me celebrate my successes more is like looking back on just 2 years. Just give yourself 2 years, and even one, just give yourself 1 year, and even take screenshots or whatever it is and be like, this is where you were only 2 years ago. Now look at yourself now, how much you've evolved as a person, as an artist. Nothing hits me more than that. I'm like, yo, I feel so good. Like let me keep going. Let me keep pushing so that 2 years from now, I can look back at myself now and be like, that feels like ages ago. So that's what helps me a lot too.
I love that.
How do you hope the music industry and the global music industry changes in the next 10 years?
I hope that it continues to allow for more voices to be heard, more unfamiliar faces to be seen, people that you're not used to seeing on, you know, billboards and all that good stuff, number ones, just opening it up for everybody.
Now it's such a singles world where it's like single after single after single, and a lot of music, like a lot of quantity. And I hope that it takes a turn back around to like slowing down a little bit and waiting for those bodies of work. Because that's something I would love. And I love the anticipations. I hope that's like the main thing that's happening in the future. Fingers crossed, inshallah.
Yay.
Well, thank you guys so much for this. You have beautiful energy, and I love both of you as artists. So thank you. I really appreciate everything that you've shared today.
Thank you for having us.
Yes.
It's such a good time.
Thank you so much for listening. If you liked what you heard today, please follow Song Start only on Spotify.